footage from my trip to Scotland with my mom. So let's do something different today. Join me and let's take a walk. Today's topic I've been thinking a lot about since I got a question from one of the members of our community. How do we make peace when we realize that a friendship can't be fixed? Well, I've been thinking a lot about this topic. I don't know about you, but I've found myself as I get older in situations where I have to face the fact that a friendship, even at our age, has changed so much that we're struggling to find commonality. Have you ever had a friendship that just seemed to stop feeling good, or something was out of balance with it? You care about the person, you have years of memories, but lately every interaction leaves you feeling just a little dismissed, maybe a little unappreciated, or maybe even sad. If that sounds familiar, know that you're not alone. And today we're talking about something that's both tender, tough, but also a little bit freeing. Making peace when a friendship can't be fixed, because sometimes the kindest thing we can do for ourselves and for our friend is to stop forcing what no longer fits and start choosing peace instead. But how do we do that with grace? Well, there comes a point in many of our lives when we start to look at our friendships with a different lens. You know, some of the people we've called friends for decades no longer feel like friends. They feel more like an obligation. We hang on to the friendship because of habit, fear, out of loyalty to the past, even when the present connection feels a little bit weird. You know, today I wanted to talk about something that we rarely say out loud. You know, women have a tough time talking about these things because it's embarrassing when friendships fail. Well, at least we've been taught that it's embarrassing, that we should be embarrassed, that we're a failure because we failed, right? It's a no-win situation. But how do we make peace? And how do we give ourselves grace when we realize that the friendship just can never be what it used to be? Well, as I always say on this channel, the first thing we always have to do is ask ourselves what's not working. We have to do some self-reflection, because it's really hard to admit to yourself that a friendship isn't healthy anymore, especially when it's been years, sometimes half a lifetime. Shared memories, shared history. Maybe your families have become friends. Your children are friends. We get everything crisscrosses, and we get very intertwined with each other's lives. But honestly, taking some time to reflect is especially hard, because if you're like me, it makes you face reality, which doesn't always live up to the fantasy that we build up around the friendship. It's like the fish that got away. It gets bigger and bigger and better the more time that goes on. Now, not every friendship is meant to last forever. We know that. And some are only for a season. But there are some friendships that just keep going and going and going, kind of like the Energizer Buddy. But you get to a point when you find yourself always making the calls, always sending the texts, always planning the meetups, or maybe you realize that your friend is always the one reaching out. And deep down, you feel that something's off. You know something's off. Well, I always ask myself, so how did I get in this situation, right? Why do we hang on? Well, I'll tell you, I've stayed because it's familiar. It's easy. Because the idea of starting over, making new friends at this stage of my life, honestly, it feels overwhelming. We stay in these friendships because we tell ourselves, at least I have someone. I know what to expect, for better or for worse. Even if the friend is no longer comfortable, kind of like that old pair of slippers, it just is tough to make a change, especially the idea of walking away. But we get to grieve a friendship without beating ourselves up. We get to be grateful for what it once was. You can love the memories, but letting go of the version of that person or of yourself that no longer fits with who you are or who they are today. It's not a failure to release a friendship if that's your only choice, or to make changes, to set boundaries, to take a little time away from them, to be careful with how much you pour into the friendship. But whatever is best for you, you get to decide. Next, you have to accept what you can't change. Well, we all know that. Some friendships just reach a natural ending. You grow apart. You realize it. Maybe your values no longer align. Maybe a lifestyle change has happened. Maybe your friend moves away and you're just trying desperately to keep the friendship at the same level it used to be. But let's face it, our new life takes us away from our old life. And it's really hard to face the fact that something you thought or someone you thought would always be there just doesn't feel the same anymore. You can't fix something that only one person wants to mend. You can't force a connection where there's no effort or interest on the other side. It's sad, but it's true. Now, acceptance doesn't mean you're okay with the friendship ending. Maybe it was you that purposely let yourself drift away, or maybe you can feel them drifting away. It just means that you've stopped fighting reality and you're ready to sit down, do a little self-reflection, and figure out where that friendship needs to fit in your life, if at all, moving forward. Because when you accept what the future is going to look like for you, you reclaim your energy. You take your power back from any disappointment that you felt. And honestly, that disappointment doesn't have to be anyone's fault. Boy, we all wish things would never change. Certainly not for the worse. We wish things would never be awkward or uncomfortable. And that's usually why we stay too long, because we hate change. We love habit. But that habit becomes just like those worn out old slippers I talked about. We just can't part with them. But boy, do we complain to ourselves that it's time for new ones over and over and over. I love how so many of you always comment that you're at the stage of your life where you just want peace. Well, unfortunately, that peace often comes with making changes that we don't want to make. So how do you find that peace, and how do you accept the closure? And how do you move on when a friendship can't be fixed? Well, first thing you have to do is release the fantasy. What it could have been, what it should have been, what it would have been. We all do it. And then forgive yourself if you feel like you need to forgive yourself, because maybe you're the one that has to make the tough decision to move on. Or maybe you have to forgive your friend because it was inevitable, but they were the one that took the step to change the friendship or to move on from the friendship. Refocus on yourself. It's time to move forward. Find places for you to grow. Learn new things, travel if you can, volunteer, challenge yourself to something new, a hobby, an experience, an adventure. learn something new, push your brain into new areas. Sometimes making peace means redefining ourselves. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to keep the friendship, but just redefine it. Put it in a different spot in your life. Because maybe it doesn't have to end completely. Maybe it just needs new boundaries or a little bit of distance. But you get to decide where that person fits in your life now, or if they fit in at all. At this stage in life, peace matters more than history. You've earned the right to choose relationships that bring you comfort, not confusion. So if you've been holding on for too long to a friendship that just can't be fixed, take a deep breath. You don't have to fix it. You just have to free yourself from guilt. Well, I'd love to hear your comments. And next week, I'll be back home in Texas at the kitchen counter, looking forward to our next topic. I hope you all have a great week. Bye-bye.